When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Hey folks, it's the Unsung Podcast. I am Mark. I'm joined by Chris.
Yes,
Chris.
You do have it set to 1.5% speed.
I do, yeah.
1.5%.
1.5%? Yeah. Oh God.
1.5 times speed is what I meant. And I'm not even going to suggest that we retake that because it wasn't good enough to warrant it.
How long would an episode be if it was at 1.5% speed? It would be like 7 hours.
It would probably mean that the episode was as long as it takes me to edit it.
Yeah. But it'd be a really good edit for you though, because it'd take you like...
I didn't really think about it. I just edit it in real time. That'd be the thing. With rolling edits, you know, by the time you got to the end of a syllable, I'd be like, fuck that. The amount of times you say like,
I know. Everyone says
what was the one that Weaver used to always say? He had one as well.
Was it not
He had a lot of ums.
Yeah.
Yeah, because by the time he started it, I could have highlighted it, cut it and mended the join before he even got to the end of it.
Yeah, like it gets to a point where you can see it from, I don't know, a mile away on the waveform. I know exactly what that is and I'm just taking that right out.
I just need the Speed Force. There you go, there's a deep cut. There's for comic book world.
Wow.
Need the Speed Force to edit the Unsung Pod in real time.
Are you Barry Allen? You've actually got blonde hair like Barry Allen, so I mean...
yeah, I suppose. Almost as boring as the Flash as well. Yeah. Okay, well, it's good that we're off to a rollicking good start here because I genuinely think it's going to be difficult to make this one funny. Looking at my notes here, I'm like, is that funny? It's got the word sex in it, I suppose. That's funny. Yeah, I don't know how we're going to keep people paying attention. So this week, the Unsung Podcast is going to do what the Unsung Podcast should and does do on occasion, which is take a fairly deep cut and thrust it under your noses and hope that you're into it. And actually I think you will be because it's fucking brilliant. The problem is there's not really much in the way of an angle on this one.
Nah, I mean
even the one movie angle we've got's not really funny.
I forgot to listen to that soundtrack. It's interesting, this one, because usually we like to have an angle. And it was the same with the Hacksan Cloak. There was kind of an angle there, but we had to kind of retrofit it to make it work. I suppose I was being a bit of a dick on that one, so that was kind of the angle. I'm not even going to be a bit of a dick in this one because it's my choice. Yeah, so we are going to be covering Punish Honey by the act Vessel. Sebastian Gainsborough. I was going to say Gainsbourg, and that's a different family.
Seb Gainsborough from Bristol. No, it's Vessel, singular, not Vessels, who are a kind of post-rock turned electro project somewhere in England. I don't know. I want to say like Oxford or something.
Oxford.
They seem mildly posh. But in saying that, also a band that I really rate. And also a band I would maybe even put forward for this.
Maybe we did them next week to really confuse people.
It did cross my mind, yeah. But then that would be a second episode in a row with absolutely no comedic angle.
Well, we can't win them all, mate. We can't win them all.
Or any of them.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So, Mark, before we get into the hilarity of this week's episode,
Jam-packed, laugh-filled episode.
Admin
Robert Howe, welcome to the Unsung Patreon as a subscriber. He joins us on our £4 per month tier, which is one of two tiers that we have on our Patreon.
Very simple. Nominal fee, really.
Nominal fee,
I would call it. A nominal fee, a pittance.
A pittance.
Maybe, that's Scots, isn't it?
I think it's British. British. I think its origin is Scottish.
It means a small amount, as in like almost an insultingly small amount. If you get paid a pittance.
Yeah.
We get paid a pittance.
We do get paid a pittance.
That's it in a sentence.
You contribute to that pittance. Yes, he joins us at £4 a month or whatever your local equivalent currency is. Thank you, Robert.
Welcome to the AAA group. I hope prepared to get your arse felt. Which is another bit of Scottish parlance that doesn't literally mean get groped.
Well, I was something I almost posted in the group earlier on today, which I'm going to say out loud now. Have you seen that Biohazard and Life of Agony are touring next year?
Wow, no.
So speaking about getting your arse felt, like a boy Evan, woof. So yeah, that's a vibe. They're playing in the garage, I think. No, SWG3.
They're playing at SWG3. Oh, that's an interesting choice. I mean, that seems like a stick-on garage show, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Or like Classic Grand, or like one of these stodgy metal venues.
Yeah, but they play big rooms, don't they, Biohazard, because they are kind of legends. So to many people, older people,
faded legends, but legends. I was in the garage last weekend.
Why?
Don't you remember what I was doing with my weekend? My Saturday night. Myself and Ben Power and Jason Costello, listening to the show, I might add, we got together and we went to see Pearl Scam.
Oh yeah, of course.
And Angry Hair.
How was Angry Hair?
Hereby, this is perfect because this will give us a wee bit of levity. I can honestly, first of all, the fucking show started at 6:30. What's that all about?
I fuck with that, man. You know, getting to my bed early. I'm really up for that.
On a Saturday night, starting at 6:30, man. The problem is you fucking miss it.
Yeah. The garage shows always start early though because of the hard curfew.
Yeah, I wasn't too chuffed about that because you're rattling the food down your neck as well to try and get out. Anyway, Angry Hair were unironically excellent. Like, actually fucking brilliant. I had to marvel at just how good they were. If you are based in the UK and if you have any time for Alice in Chains, I can honestly endorse what a fucking good job that band does of an Alice in Chains cover set. Fairly flawless set list. It didn't do grind, which I was a wee bit put out by, but they did stuff from all different corners of the catalogue, including some unplugged stuff. Good sense of humour, good performance, sounded great, bit of crowd interaction. Singer came out in the middle of the floor for the last tune. Yeah, they ticked all the boxes to the point where, like, I think Ben was a wee bit sceptical. He's a big Alice in Chains fan, as you probably remember, and he was like, it's just going to be pish. And by the second song, he was like, this is definitely worth it, because the ticket wasn't cheap either. And Jason was just grinning from ear to ear, which is not really something Jason does for anyone that's ever met him. But yeah, it was fucking brilliant. Really, really good. Pearl Scam didn't have as good a night of it. Wasn't the same band.
I was going to ask.
It wasn't the same band. So that's the thing that a lot of like covers touring gigs do, is that actually there's a lot of musicians that overlap between the bands to maximise the kind of income. In fact, sometimes it's the full same band. But in this case, no, different band. Singer, by the way, had a great voice, did a great Iggy Vedder.
Iggy Vedder.
Really bang on it. However, and this is not on the band, but it did fit the surroundings for those of you that know the garage. There was a bunch of older blokes that were, I mean, and I say that as an older a slowly older bloke. There was a bunch of older blokes in front of us who looked a wee bit too into it when Alice in Chains / Angry Hair were on stage. And as Pearl Scam were about to kick into the first notes of, let me try and remember. You know what? I don't even know what fucking song it was. I think it was one of their new songs, which was like a really odd way to start the set when you could have started with a total ripper. Anyway,
are they one of those cover bands that play like the set that the band are currently playing? Because that's what when we seen Dookie last year, the Green Day cover band, who were excellent, they basically played the set that Green Day were playing on that tour.
I didn't know that, no. Well, having not seen Pearl Jam, I don't know, but just as they were about to start that song, it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then one of these old blokes projectile vomited like a fucking fire hose I mean, just howling like Exorcist meets Ghostbusters. Just, you know that way when someone's so sick that the sick starts to actually pile up.
Yeah,
and you're like, I didn't know like liquid could pile, but it piles up, and then
there's some matter in that as well.
And then the mountain slowly expands as it sinks. Anyway, he did this, and he couldn't have picked a more central spot to the middle of the mosh pit, right? And a fucking like huge circle opened up with everybody squeezed out to the edges. Like, so there's a bunch of people squeezed right up the front against the fence. The rest of you squeezed all the way back up towards the bar. People squeezed right out towards the sides of the room, and just this fucking gulf with this fucking conspicuous pile in the middle of it, this steaming pile. The old guy was gone. I don't know how. I think he actually maybe just turned inside out and fell to bits. But anyway, and the fucking room absolutely reeked. It was proper howling. And so honestly, I felt fucking bad for the band, but I couldn't stay. It was like 25 minutes into it, and they were getting into some good stuff. They did Corduroy off of Vitalogy and stuff, but fucking honestly, everybody's standing with their hand over their mouth or their nose, and it was just bogging, and the staff came out and started like trying to clean it up, but it was so chunky that they were basically having to like lift it up. You know, like if you spilled a bag of gravel, you know what I mean? It's like, but it was fucking murder, so we ended up leaving. Bumped into the singer from Angry Hair on the way out. Apparently didn't get paid very much. They were...
That's surprising.
Yeah, there you go. But somebody did though, because it was quite a lot of fucking...
I know, fuck. I like it if... Was it the big room in the garage?
Aye.
Fucking hell, that is a big room.
Aye. It wasn't full, but I mean, there was still a fair bit of money changing hands there. But regardless, Angry Hair, very fucking good. I mean, hey, Pearl Scam could be very good. They didn't really stand a chance. The singer did notice at one point. He made a comment like, sorry mate, I can't remember your accent. I'm just going to do a random English accent. Is somebody boffed in the middle of the floor? Oh, it's fucking Glasgow, innit? Of course they have. But yeah, that was my Saturday night.
Wow, that's...
Yeah. And after it, here's another little bit. Even with my novelty hair, and I was done up in this like top that was like black and gold on Saturday night, right? I tried to get into a goth club and I got dinged for not being alternative enough.
Wow.
They were like, there's a dress code, and they pointed at the poster. I was like, aye. I was like dressed all in black with like completely bleached blonde hair, and I was wearing like a fucking like black metal t-shirt. I'm like, all right, and they're like, yeah, dress code, and I'm like, I thought there was just a music code because I'm here for the music code. This is what I listen to, and they were like, no, sorry, not tonight. And it was just a weird inverse of like turning up to like a club in my Nirvana t-shirt and check shirt and getting pied for that as well. So there you go.
Wow.
Elitism exists on both sides.
It does. Good story.
Thanks. Do we want to get any more subs? We probably need some more suggestions for the Nexus Tub.
Our Nexus Tub is running low. We've got 3 in it, so if you get some suggestions, please send them our way. Do it on Unsung Pod, which is our handle on every social media platform, or you can email us.
Not X.
It is also on Twitter, yes.
I've asked us to be removed for that, Mark.
What?
Can we see that?
You didn't ask me that, did you?
I did, aye.
Okay, I'm not against removing.
I took all the music stuff I'm related to off Twitter. I don't want to be involved with it anymore.
Mm-hmm. That is a big pile of sick.
If you do follow us on X, Twitter, please follow us somewhere else.
We're also on TikTok now. We don't have any videos yet.
Follow us in that.
Planning for the future, and we'll be able to talk more about that at some point this year.
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah,
I mean, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't with most of these social media companies. But yeah, just for sheer visibility and resentment of Elon Musk generally, get off X.
Mm-hmm. I still am a little bit addicted to it, but I find myself getting more and more frustrated by having to clean up my feed every single day from all the nonsense that's on it. And it's just, I spend more time doing that than actually fucking reading the feed.
The riots in August, I think, were the last straw for a lot of people. Aye, but I mean, there's been so many last straws, so we'll be leaving that pretty soon. So find us elsewhere.
Find us on every other platform, or our website, unsungpod.net. You can email it to us over there as well. So yeah,
let's talk about some music. Vessel. So I was introduced to this album in particular, actually, Punish Honey by Ben.
Nice.
Ben Power, Blank Mass, Fuck Buttons fame. who actually lived with Robin Carolyn of Triangle, the label that put this out for years. Now, we'll come back to Robin later because he's quite a key figure in this story. And if I remember rightly for Ben's story, the house was owned by a guy called Milo for the band The Big Pink, who were incredibly hip and popular.
Why do I know that? I know that name.
Yeah. So I've been assured that the Nexus potential of that house is terrific, but the stories are pretty much under lock and key. Famous names passing through it, you know. I basically had to sign an NDA just to text Ben this morning.
Nice.
One direct quote that he did permit me to use was this, quote, "We found the master tapes for the first Klaxons record underneath the passenger seat of an old Chevy that was left in the garden there."
What?
There you go, there's a glimpse into that flat.
A Chevy?
Aye,
Wow.
Chevy. Apparently, I think he made a cup of tea for Solange Knowles in that flat as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. All I'm saying is that we might need to start a Nexus that's just a Ben Nexus.
Okay.
Yeah. You know,
Add that to the Weaver Nexus as well.
You tell me Ben gets to Muhammad Ali in one step.
Oh, really?
It's fucking mental.
That's cool.
Yeah. Anyway, basics about Vessel. Yeah, so Seb Gainsborough from Bristol began his musical career in 2010. Apparently self-describes as non-dance dance music, or at least I believe in it when his early press releases did. So he began his career as part of Bristol's Young Echo Collective.
Unforeseen like my team and the height that we rose to, stacked till my neck froze, mauve blue. Young Captain Klepto, you should know, but black disguise.
You can find a whole bunch of their stuff actually. I saw they've got quite a lot of it on Bandcamp. It includes El Kid, Khan, Khan, Man on Mars, and Jabu, Jabu, among its members. Whole group of young electronic and kind of hip hop affiliated musicians from Bristol doing a lot of stuff. Well known for like bass heavy, bass driven experimental electronica as well.
Can you put in a clip of William Shatner saying Khan from The Wrath of Khan too?
Khan! Yeah. Yes, I can.
Good.
Yes, I can. You know, okay, ignore it. Forget it.
It was good. I said good. I said good.
Clinton room floor. So Vessel, Seb also went and worked solo after a number of limited 12-inch EP releases with a London label called Left Blank, and an EP that came out on Liberation Technologies, which is a subsidiary of a very well-known dance label called Mute. Vessel was primarily then released by Triangle Records. We'll talk about Triangle in a second. It became increasingly known for collaboration with both classical instrumentalists and audiovisual artists as time went on. In July 2020, announced the launch of a new music imprint called Paplu in partnership with a long-time collaborator, a violinist called Raki Singh. And to mark that, they released a new edit of 2014's Red Sex, a track that we're going to talk about in the context of this album. And that featured Singh on viola and violin this time. On April the 12th, 2022, Vessel announced on his social media feed that he had co-composed the score for Robert Eggers' film The Northman.
The Northman.
With Robin Carolyn. We'll come back to that score. So his first record was 2011, really, the Nylon Sunset single on that Left Blank label. I think he put out some limited edition cassette releases on Recorda's Astrodynamics as well. The following year he put out Misery is a Communicable Disease. An EP that was issued by that Liberation Technologies imprint, where he added a bunch of industrial influences. He used like warped tape stuff and built all of that on top of his techno foundations. And that kind of brings us up to the point of his first album. We'll obviously go through the discography. He's got loads of these kind of EPs, individual releases, collaborative singles, some kind of quite high profile remixes. We mentioned them in the context of Fever Ray.
Yep.
Because he co-produced one of the tracks on the album that we covered.
Good song that as well.
Yeah, really good. One of the best ones on it. So yeah, had you ever heard of Vessel?
Yes, I had.
And you know why?
Yeah, because I think you brought it up. You've brought it up on a number of occasions.
Yeah.
So I heard this album before.
Back, maybe about 2 or 3 years into the podcast, was one of the subscription bonuses that we offered was that we would make you like private playlists.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you subscribed and you gave us I think we asked you to submit 3 tracks that you liked, and then from those 3 tracks we would try and build you like a little playlist that was tailored to you of stuff that you otherwise maybe wouldn't have heard. And I used to put Vessel on that for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when people said they liked, I don't know, like Radiohead and John Hopkins, you know, you would sort of be like, okay, so you like experimental electronica and bits and bobs, atmospherics, and Vessel just, for me, was just one of the best purveyors of that really interesting, innovative middle sound there. Because it is electronica, but it does it a disservice kind of reducing it to that, because there's a lot more in terms of ambition going on in the music. And ironically, there's a lot less going on in the music quite often. It can be quite minimalist.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like the early stuff, for sure, you can definitely hear that dubby thing, which was very popular in Bristol.
Mm-hmm.
Probably still is quite popular in Bristol electronic
It's a
music.
trip hop as well.
Yeah. But as he goes on, it becomes so. This album is minimal. The more recent one, it's not very minimal. It's quite maximal, actually.
But as I say, there's so many of those little small scale kind of releases and things. I don't want to spend too much time on them, because you can hear that he's finding a sound, and also because there's other people involved in them, it's very hard to parse who's bringing what to the party.
Yeah.
So he's got 3 studio albums, and I think really what we'll do is we'll focus on those.
Mm-hmm.
Now, those 3 studio albums all came out on Triangle, which I mentioned in the
Triangle.
Tri-Angle. This is a really interesting kind of cutting edge label that started in 2010. Dazed and Confused magazine was an early advocate of them and called them a quote, one of today's most singular musical tribes. In 2011, Triangle was named one of the top 50 labels in America by Billboard magazine.
Top 50, wow.
Yeah. In 2013, Robin Carolan, the founder, was profiled in The New Yorker, which is
really
big shit. Yeah,
holy
hot shit. And The Wire called the label one of the hardest labels to pin down in contemporary music, referring to the diversity and the originality and innovation that went on in a lot of the things they put out. The Guardian on Triangle said, as the label home of Balama Cab, it's a fucking, I mean, don't stand a chance trying to pronounce that on a podcast. Holy Other and Clams Casino, these are some of the notable people that were putting out. It's the place we went to discover ghostly, glitchy electronica and computer generated music that never left us cold but assailed us with its angular, annihilating loveliness.
I like that.
The label kind of falls into that stable of uber hip electronic and underground trendsetters of the 2010s, alongside maybe Cassine and Sacred Bones, with whom Vessel and also Ben have released stuff. Vessel released the Northman soundtrack on that label. People on and around the label would go on to collaborate with all sorts of folk, including Kanye West, Björk, A$AP Rocky, FKA Twigs, Atticus Ross, Massive Attack, The Weeknd, amongst others. Björk was a huge supporter of the label and credited Robin Carolan on her Utopia album. I think she referred to him as her fifth ear or fifth set of ears or something like that. Apparently, Triangle had a motto, because the label's not going anymore. The motto was "Pop is religion, overground is underground." Pop is religion, overground is underground. So, given how esoteric it could be, that seemed a bit counterintuitive, but apparently I think I kind of picked up the label wrong because of the angle I came at it. I mean, for example, Ben tells me that the first ever release on Triangle was a compilation of Britney Spears covers. Which is apparently like hen's teeth now. I mean, even Ben's not got a copy of it. The label also signed Aluna George. Who was seen as being one of their potential breakout pop stars. You know, it was pop, you know, alternative pop, but still commercially very viable. So Vessel clearly represents maybe the more esoteric end of their roster, and yet that's where I discovered them. So I think my understanding of the label is a little bit skewed based on that. Although I do think that having actually Vessel certainly lent the label a credibility. Yeah. They also worked with the Hacks and Cloak. They worked with Serpent with Feet, who we may mention at some point in future, and they worked with Forest Swords, amongst others. The label closed down after a decade, so started in 2010, closed in 2020, seemingly just due to change priorities. I was trying to kind of get to the bottom of it, and Ben was going to speak to Robin to try and get us a wee bit of information on that, but I don't know. I thought, well, perhaps it was just facing financial adversity, but I think I get the feeling that maybe Robin just wasn't enjoying the day-to-day of running a label and had so many other things then opening up for him that maybe he was like, I've had enough of this, it's run its course. And he went on to work on various movie projects, including The Northman and now forthcoming Nosferatu film. He's kind of the musical director for these, so I don't know how much of the music Robin actually plays. I feel he's sort of like, as I understand it, some sort of conceptual overseer and sort of steers the project and says, I need a bit of that, I need a bit of this, and sort of like pieces it together, kind of using these other people as his hands, a conductor of sorts. Yeah, and without getting too into the weeds, the only other parts of the discography that maybe merit a wee mention: Wax Dance, an EP that came out in 2011, which Pitchfork described at the time as verging on chillwave. And listening to it isn't something that I could have seen myself getting into. If Vessel had continued down this path, it's just totally competent, obviously, but nothing about it made me want to slam it back on. And then Standard EP, which was 2012, where Vessel was seen to have cleaned their sound up and maybe a little bit too much. And so what actually transpired was that by the time Vessel's first album came out, Order of Noise, in 2012, they seemed to have kind of maybe taken a couple of steps back towards being a little bit dirtier again. Like, oh no, that Standard EP was a bit too nice, let's go back a bit. So yeah, Order of Noise, debut album in 2012, the first full release on Triangle. All Music observed Gainsborough reconfigured elements of techno, house, garage, dubstep, ambient and industrial, and introduced the tilted beats and warped melodies that became hallmarks of his music. The Guardian did compare it, coincidentally, to a combination of New Order and Art of Noise, big 80s acts, and given that it was called Order of Noise, I don't know if they were inferring that was deliberate. Yeah. Did you get listening to Order of Noise?
I did, yeah. Did feel as though it was quite dubby. Parts of it reminded me of Burial.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
It's not quite as stark or as dubsteppy, I guess, as Burial. Some of Burial stuff could be. But yeah, there was a couple of tracks in it that kind of stood out to me. Image of Bodies. Kind of skittish sounding. It's got a seasicky kind of bass, which is I think a hallmark.
Seasicky, it's going to become a thing
of
isn't it?
dub in it. Elsewhere, Silton, it was quite grimy sounding. Kind of goes back to what I was saying, a bit dirty. He seems to have this thing where he often chooses quite tribal sounding percussion. And that's one of his hallmarks, and it's quite prominent in that song. Also got some nice arpeggiators in it, which again is another hallmark of his sound. Leche, maybe. It was not bad. It feels very Bristolian, very dubby, but then the percussion kind of veers into like a trip hoppy beat. So it's all there, man. I think that Playing Cards is one of the last, second last song on the record.
Number 9,
Yeah. It's quite a minimal, dark dance tune, which kind of portends as to what would come in the next record. I think.
That's where we get our first 4 to the floor, isn't it? But it didn't really go anywhere for me, you know. It was a bit too minimalist even, and I think the retro drum samples that they used in that are maybe just the wrong side of ironic as well. I don't think they come across as cool. I think they come across as a wee bit naff.
That's interesting, isn't it?
I mean, other points in that though, like Visor, the opening track, at the very start of that, it's a tiny detail, but there's an incredibly subtle, grainy, crunchy little distortion that pops up. And if you've got headphones in, it almost feels like you're chewing grit. It's a very odd sensation, and it's in stark contrast to there's a kind of Enya-esque ethereal elfin vocal wash that's happening at that point. And I think that says something about Vessel's instinct really early on, that starts with this kind of very angelic thing, but has this like crunchy, gritty distortion, like gravel underneath it.
I feel you.
Yeah. The 6th track, Aries. This one gets the darkness of Vessel for me, you know, the darkness that would kind of take over going forward, which I think is his strongest place. The album is totally competent, but just a little bit polite for my tastes. But that track, it kind of growls softly. You know when a dog is growling, and it's not barking, and it's not really growling, but it's doing that thing where it's just letting you know that it's not happy. This track is a bit like that to me, the way the bass synth in particular operates. And another one I think is Scarletta, the 8th track, kind of bears its teeth a bit. It's got that machine gun kick drum that's reminiscent of the actual track Machine Gun by Portishead from Third. You know, fellow Bristolians, or well, sort of. The glitchier, distorted high tones in that are a bit more satisfying, and there's this one solitary bass ascent that he does. It's around about 2 minutes 55, and it's hugely rewarding, this little 4-step change, and it comes just as the track ends, and I have to confess to being a bit frustrated by that, because he only does it once, and it's a brilliant bit.
Yeah.
And I think it's the kind of thing that would have made a great section, but it never gets a chance.
It does something similar on one of the tracks in Punish Honey as well, at the very end, which we'll get to.
So, I mean, overall, it's stick-on, high-quality, modern electronica record. It's definitely the end of electronica that I can get with. It's definitely unsettling and a bit obtuse in places, but it almost never really commits to the confrontation as much as I'd like, and it becomes a wee bit too close to like a background listen as a result.
Yeah.
You know, I could put this on and do other stuff. I can't put on Punish Honey and do other stuff. I just can't. It grabs my attention. And Punish Honey came next. That was in 2014. We'll obviously come back to that, but for the second album, great little detail, with help from his dad apparently, he spent months making a harmonic guitar, it says. Harmonic guitar, don't know what that means. And some kind of flute that he then incorporated into the tracks alongside sheets of metal and experimental electronic devices.
That's interesting because there is a stringed instrument on Punish Honey, which I was like, is that a cello? Is that a guitar? I wasn't really sure, and and the metallic percussion is all over that record as well.
Yeah.
So. And it's also in the later one as well.
Yep. Following some performances at Tate Britain and the University of Liverpool, a release called Transition was recorded and came out in erased tapes in 2016. And Gainsborough took that works intertwining the classical and electronic elements to greater lengths on the third album, Queen of Golden Dogs. So Queen of Golden Dogs was a 2018 release. Landed with some really good reviews. It included a Pitchfork 8.0. As mentioned, it follows a period of kind of musical expansion, so that entailed loads of collaborations, a lot more work in textural elements and typically classical instruments as we would define them. The collision of styles also led to a lot of comparisons with One O Tricks Point Never, who was riding high in that moment as well. A lot of these tracks utilise the soprano skills of the singer Olivia Cheney to greater or lesser extents. She was born in Florence, but I think is English by nationality. She's a musician and academic based in Oxford now. Someone he collaborated with to quite good effect. Queen of Golden Dogs, any thoughts on it?
I said earlier on, I think it's maximalist, and it is compared to the first record. I was really quite taken aback by how classical it sounded in mode. And the first song opens with a string section, and then he just fucking bends it and warps it right out of shape, you know. And I think that's really interesting. And this is definitely a total styles clash in the very truest sense of the word. It's not so much the borrowing from other genres to create a new kind of style. It is literally a clash of electronic and classical music composed in a way which I can imagine is like classical composition.
Vessel is a bit of a snowball that's been rolling down a very large hill because he's picked up elements of everything that he's crossed paths with on the way. There's some of that early kind of trip-hoppy stuff, there's some of the kind of Bristolian Portisheady type thing, but then there's all these bits of classical stuff, there's some ethereal vocal-led stuff, there's some very cinematic things, there's some very dark synthy stuff that starts to come in, there's some almost bits of, like, it's not power electronics, but there's synth tones that you can imagine being used in those kind of like groups. It's a really interesting product that has emerged over time. With this album, I mean, going through some of the highlights for me, the first track, Phantasma, subtitled Song for Jasmine, blends elements from across that palette, including some brilliant jaggy percussion. This whole song has a frantic energy. That kind of energy kind of crops up rarely in this collection. I think this one has the most.
I agree. The way that he kind of bends the strings to like his whims through layers of electronics, I think is really good. And when the song does get going, it's almost got like an Eastern flavour to it. And the vocal, it's like a vocoder on it in some places, which I think works really well. I think it's a vocoder anyway. And the back half of the song is just mental. Sounds like chopped up horns and twisted vocals and frantic percussion, like you said. I've written here, it's like the tune has been put in a blender and just put in fast forward, towards the end. It's a really good bit of work, that song.
And it's also marked by the contrast with the next track, Good Animal, subtitle For Hannah, which sweeps us in. It's almost like a softly lit hypnotic bath, being in some sort of like spa retreat. It's a very, very odd, ethereal bit of music and really, really quite a jarring contrast. And the record likes to swing about like that. It does a lot of that kind of thing. I will say I could really have lived without the fifth track, Arcanum. That's the harpsichordy one. It's novel, it's odd. Weirdly, it stuck in my head because it matched a bit with the artwork and the whole kind of Queen of Golden Dogs thing, because it does sound a little bit, 15th century, but I just don't really like it as a bit of music. The sixth track, Glory Glory, subtitled Tippy, has a nice random skittish energy again as he kind of freestyles. It's like he's doing like a synth line, and it really sounds like he was just freestyling the take, because I couldn't identify any real kind of pattern. And that was quite nice, because a lot of this stuff is programmed, but that's not. It also has a really good Latin push to the beat underneath it. It makes it really interesting. The seventh track, I actually wanted to bring this one to you, because I don't know if you came across this, but I'm going to actually refer to Pitchfork, one of their good reviews. The track's called Torno me eles naue, I think. Basically, the review brings this to the fore. Cheney sings Fernando Pessoa's 1930 poem Nhau sei quantas almas tenho, which I think translates to I don't know how many souls I have. Pessoa, one of Portugal's most revered 20th century poets, wrote under dozens of aliases he called heteronyms, lots of them variations of the word for anonymous in various languages. Cool. Coincidentally or not, Pessoa is also Portuguese for person. No wonder he always felt estranho, as he laments in this poem, a stranger even to himself. Pessoa's obsession with his multiple personas apparently bordered on the pathological. He reported seeing the faces of his heteronyms in the mirror. Perhaps he suffered from dissociations that would these days be diagnosed as a disorder. Perhaps through his interest in spiritualism and the occult, because he was apparently Aleister Crowley's pen pal. Oh, wow. He had a gift for seeing beyond the visible and rational. Yeah.
I mean,
we eye roll with that one.
It's possible, I suppose. You can't prove it, I guess, but I would probably say it's the former.
Yeah. Then they observe Shaney's laminated harmonies are similarly resistant to unification, growing purposely distorted as they gather towards a crescendo. It's a really interesting insight into where that track comes from. It's a fucking dense concept.
Yeah, I didn't know that at all. That is really interesting.
Yeah. And then The one that I have to mention a wee bit of detail, is the 8th track, Paplu.
Yeah, that song is fucking mad, by the way.
Paplu, and this is actually what lent the name to his own imprint now. The subtitle is Love That Moves the Sun. And it is by far the standout on this for me. Sure. Pitchfork agrees. They called it, quote, among the greatest slabs of prog electronics made this century. Just this one track. And I'll be honest, I'm not even a huge fan of the first 3 minutes of it, but god damn does this song go some places after that. The root movements in it around the 7 minutes are just fucking sublime. The percussion is tremendous, and the demented, scattered arpeggiator movements give the song a freewheeling energy. It's almost like a song is in a loose melodic orbit, because it swings around at a kind of pivotal point and it feels like it's about to break loose, but a bit, like a moon in a loose orbit, it never quite tumbles out into space. Absolutely fantastic piece of work.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating song. It combines the female vocals with the arps and synths. At the start of the song, it sounds like they've been taken right off of Speak and Spell from Depeche Mode. The synth sound actually reminds me of Just Can't Get Enough, and the melody is quite similar, I think, to that as well. But then it just shapeshifts into a completely different beast. The landscape becomes more abrasive and challenging. There's fractured vocals and percussion. It's just got a bunch of different movements in it, which then they all go to town. There's a huge bass bit that comes in around 6 minutes 5, which really elevates the song for me. It's just a really fascinating bit of work. I think the outro as well feels Far Eastern. So saying it swings about is a really good way of putting it, I think, and it's 9 minutes 44, so it takes you on a journey.
It's a hugely ambitious bit of work for him. It really goes to a place on this that I think works well. I'd like to see him do some more long form tracks like that, where he really allows the themes to develop to excess. Yeah, because as I said with that other track, for example, in the previous album, it suddenly does this bit that you're like, oh, that's wonderful, and then finishes and you're like, you could fucking make another 5 minutes out of that bit. That's fantastic, So yeah, I mean, the only other album to really discuss would be Punish Honey, the 2014 record. But before we do the main event, we should discuss quickly The Northman from 2023, the official soundtrack. Have you seen the film?
Yep, class.
Yeah, I've seen the film. Class film.
I think we actually spoke about it on this podcast when it came out.
Yeah, I think we did, yeah. Empire magazine, in their 5-star review, said, quote, long takes like these, accompanied by composers Robin Carolan and Sebastian Gainsborough's pulsating score, throbbing with drum beats and low notes, emphasise the savage spectacle and unforgiving harshness of those times, but also the powerful physicality of Skarsgård. The soundtrack is really fucking well considered in relation to this film, and in relation to what's going on in it, in relation to the overall feel of it, in relation even just to the marketing of the film. It all feels so on the same page.
Yeah. I forgot to listen to it, but I have seen the film and I love the film, and the soundtrack is a work of genius in it, because it does really help to underscore the vivid brutality of that film and some of the more esoteric points in it as well. It's all, the soundtrack does it all, which is really good. It's not just one thing, and the film isn't just one thing, so it really plays well with it.
Yeah, I mean, so much of what's contained across the 3 Vessel albums, in particular Punish Honey and Queen of Golden Dogs, is very present here, as well as loads of things from the EPs and the singles and the collaboration. You maybe subtract a lot of the lush synth parts that Vessel would typically add, but you have the same cavernous percussion and a really unnerving use of strings as well throughout. His collaborative output with strings players is just so helpful in the context of this soundtrack. He's just grown into minimalism, and it's such a mature sound. The strings themselves on the soundtrack are more organic, given the subject matter, given that this is set in the past, given that you don't want to be coming in with an FM synth when you're trying to illustrate prehistory. But the way that the strings slide about and the in and out of your periphery, there's bits in the soundtrack where, and he does this in his records as well, he has parts that sort of fade up and down during songs, and he sinks you into these, it's almost like a tar of low drones. There'll be songs where there's multiple low drones going, and you just kind of get stuck in it. You can't pull your feet out, kind of stuck in it. It lends an awful lot of that ethereal menace to the film. And I think the next time I watch the film, I really want to try and work out in my own head how much the soundtrack has contributed to it, because I suspect it's actually quite a lot. Yeah.
When these things work in unison, you don't notice them, and that's a good thing,
So that brings us to Punish Honey, the main event here. Album released in 2014. As I said, I was switched on to it one drunken night over at Ben's with a bottle of fine whiskey, and he was giving me a little tour of some new shit that he was getting into, and this was my absolute takeaway. This one really grabbed me. And one song in particular initially grabbed me. It'll probably not be a surprise when we get to it. But in terms of your first impressions of this, Mark?
It was, I'd heard it before, so I can't really remember what my first impression was, but I hadn't listened to it a lot. It did remind me a lot of the Hacks and Cloak. It feels like it's in the same universe of music. Yeah. And I'm obviously into that.
Yeah. I mean, there was like a little kind of gang. I'm not saying they were all mates. I just mean there was like a movement of this alternative electronica, like modern production techniques, certain sounds, a bit of a fetish for the occult within the music, like the Hacks and Cloak stuff, for example, really sinister. Deliberately troubling electronic music, which hadn't really been that big of a thing. And it was starting to make, real waves in reasonably sized press as well.
You love to see artists like this going on to do other renowned and bigger projects like film scores, because it feels as though it's an natural progression of this kind of thing.
I mean, I think if you go back and listen to the Hacks and Cloak episode, of which I was not a fan really, I think I said a number of times in that episode how much more I relate to the musicality of Vessel and feel that Vessel ticks a lot of the boxes of the Hacks and Cloak, but then brings a lot more to the party, and to me it's just a much more rewarding listen overall.
The thing with the Hacks and Cloak is it's all quite evolving, it's all evolving soundscapes, whereas there's always a melodic centre to Vessel's music, whether it's the earlier records or the later ones.
Yeah, but I feel Vessel's left that door open. I mean, if a moment in a film or a moment in an album requires an oblique drone or some really caustic bit of sound, he does it. He has that in his arsenal, but he's not limited to that.
Yeah.
He equally can put in something ethereal and beautiful, and that just, to me, it's just a much more interesting proposition. For the tracks in this, I would like to go through them in a bit of detail, and I've tried to avoid comparing them to too much other stuff. First of all, because I'm not an expert in electronica, and I don't want to just use obvious example like fucking Aphex Twin, and DJ Shadow. But also because I kind of feel like it's quite because of the nature of the music, it's quite a personal experience. So I've tried to kind of be more descriptive in my analysis of it. So it's it's what I take from it. So feel free to, if I'm on a totally different page, I'd be really interested with each.
That's song. Quite funny because you railed against that in the Hacks and Cloak episode.
I know, but what can I say? I'm a prick. The first track, Febrile. it's a fairly madcap start, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did you notice it has you checking to see if your sound's up or if your headphones are in? Or,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, because you press play and then it's like maybe about 15 seconds, but there's a fucking noise. And then there's these bursts of arrhythmic drums that are like played drums, like drums in a room, and they're like fucking around, and then they're suddenly replaced with this wave of raging triggered double kick and chimes. Yes, chimes. He thought, you know what would really go well with this double kick pattern? Chimes. It's a very fucking idiosyncratic opening. Yeah, it really grabs your attention. It's
the percussion reminds me of like when you used to stick a bit of plastic in the spokes of your bike.
Aye, totally.
You know, and it would hit against the frame when you cycled along. That's exactly what it reminded me of.
I mean, the thing is, it's obviously not in there because he feels it's a hugely rewarding bit of music. It's in there to get your attention and make some kind of statement about what's going to follow. It's obviously in the eyes of the beholder as to what that statement is. For me, I just think it's just a clear sign that, like, right, this isn't just going to be some by the numbers electronic album.
Yeah.
And it definitely is not, because the track that follows it, Red Sex, not without reason that this track's by miles his most streamed. It has a bit of sync, actually. It was initially in a series from 2017 called The Sinner that starred Bill Pullman. But most notably, it was in Dev Patel's Monkey Man earlier this year.
Oh, right, okay.
To fairly good effect. I actually didn't know it was in that film, and I was watching it, and I think there's a fucking mental fight going on at the time. And then I was like, I think I can hear Red Sex. What the fuck is happening? That's what it is, and it's a brilliant song for it. It amazes me that more people haven't used it, actually. It works really, really well. So I think that probably led to a lot of people streaming this, because it's way into the millions.
Yeah.
We've discussed this particular track on previous shows as a part of mixtapes and personal highlights. This is the track that I was like, whoa, this is something else. The most obvious word to use in association with this remains woozy. The oscillators are just drunk as fuck.
Yeah.
The structure is actually fairly simple, but in a kind of masterful way that brings elements in and out with minimal fuss and allows the song to keep flowing. And it really does flow, but with a kind of slow, viscous liquidity, you know? It undulates back and forth on that one kind of bass refrain. I mean, it's almost stupidly basic, that bass line. It's hugely effective. The percussion is atmospheric, and the higher work in it, it reminds me almost of a steam locomotive. All in all, one of his finest moments by far. The song that really grabbed me and, you know, made this show happen, I think.
I think the lead melody is a real earworm of this song. Aye. And that's what I enjoyed about this record, is he's really good at writing melody which is pseudo catchy, if not full on catchy. It's also got a really nice rhythm which does make you kind of want to move, even, you know what I mean? It's kind of hypnotic to me. But yeah, I enjoy the way it evolves melodically and changes, and then he slowly adds in this third, even higher synth from 4 minutes onwards. And I'm really glad he changes it up in the outro as well, because it means it doesn't outstay its welcome as a song. It's just one of those tunes that doesn't really feel its length, which I think is...
Yeah, you're right, absolutely. It's followed by Drowning in Water and Light. It's a powerful title, and there's a really eerie ascending intro that, to me, given the name and given the way the song develops, it feels like travelling up the tunnel to the light after death. Because then you pop out the other side around 50 seconds into this very cavernous, uneasy place of slowcore drumming, for starters. It's like a fucking low track, and there's these rim shots that sound that, you know, the delay on them makes them sound like heavy raindrops. There's a held low synth that makes this track terrifically suspenseful, and that suspense gets released in a beautifully understated way with a melodic bass drop at 3 minutes 20. The whole thing's really sparsely woven through with this gently, this is going to sound like an oxymoron, but gently screeching synth line. Because it is screeching, it's a really harsh sound, but it's very well placed, like, volume wise in the song. It sounds like a badly bowed rusty saw. The sort of sample that the Black Heart Procession might have used. Yeah. This isn't a track that actually leapt out at me at first when I engaged with the record, but like, what an accomplished and brilliant bit of creeping electronica it is now.
It's quite a mournful song. It takes a while to get going, but the percussion sounds generally are really well chosen and lovely. He's got this thing where the percussion feels semi-analog. So you've got a very analog,
and it is
real sounding snare.
There's definitely some played drums at a number of parts. Like the start of Febrile starts with a played drum kit.
But the bass drum is electronic a lot of the time, which I think is a really nice texture. He's really good at creating textures and bringing in different sounds for parts of songs. There's a really well chosen melodic line and some twisted but not too twisted electronic sounds now, which kind of comes back to what you were saying there about the gentle aggression of that, or the gentle twistedness of that abrasive synth sound you were talking about that comes in. I just really admire the dedication to letting the song play out. It's got a kind of neo-noir feel to me, like it could be on the Blade Runner soundtrack or something like that. A wee bit of Evangelisy feel.
It's followed by Yoi.
Yoi.
Yoi. Yoi. EUOI.
Yep.
Sounds like something you shout for the stands at West Ham. Another work of nauseous menace. Beyond those pronounced cavernous echoes of the percussion, there's these off-time faux metallic anvil strikes, and they're a really key feature of this tune. They only come in about halfway, but they are the iconic bit of this track. And again, I mean, I say iconic, it's very understated, it's very niche, but very, very distinctive.
I think I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but if it isn't clear already, I really enjoy his melodic choices.
Yeah.
And the same just goes for this one. This song to me feels more electro than anything that's come before on the record, and probably the most electro feeling song on the record overall. But for me, it was the reverb on the percussion, that gated, super gated reverb. Yeah,
it's brilliant and
pretty cool.
Really satisfying. So, the fifth track in this, Anima, Anima.
It's a cover of the Tool song.
Yeah.
Can I have a brief sidebar just for a sec here, talking about Tool?
Aye, please do.
Did you see that Ozzy Osbourne getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
No. Wait a minute, that just happened?
It just happened, aye.
That's ridiculous.
No, I think Black Sabbath had been in but he has.
Even so.
And there was a medley of Ozzy tunes played by Chad Smith on drums, of course, one of the best drummers in the world, even though the Chili's I think are push, but he is one of the best. Sorry, Craig, but he is one of the best drummers.
Chad Smith, one of the best drummers in the world.
He is.
You heard it here first, folks.
mean,
I thought this show wasn't going to be funny.
Just watch any. If you're not convinced because the Chili's are a bit shit, but go and watch the videos he's done on Drumeo of like playing songs for the first time, literally hearing them and playing them through. His feel for a groove is unparalleled. But yeah, he's playing in Ozzy's band. Robert Trujillo's playing bass because he played bass for some of the later 90s Ozzy stuff. Maynard James Keenan singing Crazy Train.
Oh yeah, he also used to do, was it Diary of a Madman?
Mm-hmm.
Was it maybe Perfect Circle? Had a cover of that they played on tour.
Yeah,
he's done a bit of that before.
And had Andrew Watt on guitar, who was the producer on the
How the fuck did we get here for this?
Because Anima too. Let me just wrap this up. So Andrew Watt is a producer who started off working with Justin Bieber, and he's now worked with new Pearl Jam record. He's produced the last two Ozzy Osbourne albums. He did the new Rolling Stones record, and he's done a few other rock bands as well. And he comes on, he starts off playing this guitar solo, but it's like slightly out of key. And I'm listening to it going, looking at all the fucking comments on YouTube and no one's mentioning it. I'm like, am I going mad? Am I the only fucking person that can hear this? And then the other side of the stage is Wolfgang Van Halen, who just fucking comes in and absolutely annihilates Randy Rhodes' guitar solo, like fucking note perfect, because he's a fucking amazing guitar player. You know what I mean? And I'm like, why is nobody mentioning the fact that Andrew Watt is clearly out of fucking key? How has nobody noticed this? But yeah, anyway,
I'm glad you got that off your chest.
Had to get off.
Maybe disrupted my flow slightly.
Sorry.
But yeah,
You wanted something funny, so
Wolfgang Van Halen.
oh, he's amazing, man.
Is that his actual name?
It's Eddie's son. Aye,
Fucking hell.
He started off.
No,
playing
let's
drums.
not go any further down this road.
He's like, his music's a bit shit, but he's an incredible musician. He's better than his dad was.
Right, okay. Anima. Nothing to do with Tool.
Nothing to do with Tool.
Fifth track. This is far less appreciated by streamers than Red Sex, it seems, but god damn it, this track is brilliant. It feels incredibly well rounded and incredibly well realised. Again, it has a seesaw quality to the central synth. My pitch to The Guardian, if I was describing this: shrill electronic animal noises shatter the serenity of the electronic jungle.
Why The Guardian?
I don't know. Pitchfork. Not paying very well. You know, the shrill animal noise kind of quality of that was maybe sort of emphasised by the incessant tribal nature of the drums that you'd observed earlier on. The changes in this track are brilliant but subtle. The entire scope of the song shifts with minimal effort. You know, it goes from being jungle to being almost interplanetary. At 2.5 minutes, there's a brilliant melodic shift and this haunting synth descent. These bent notes in it that are like passing spacecraft. The bass dropout after 3 minutes 45 is very effective, especially given the introduction of these kind of acidic synths that come in after 4 minutes. And the ending, as those synths go up the octaves over the drums, a bit harder this time. It's just pure fucking genius, really. I think it's an absolutely magnificent bit of music. I think it's probably the best thing he's done, in my opinion, and that's, given Paplu and Red Sex, that's no small feat.
A song feels really paranoid to me. It makes me feel like I'm being stalked by something. And there's
Maybe,
yeah, probably am. There's a melody on it, the higher melody, which is, I think, is an octave higher, which just drops in every now and again, which I like as a really good melodic hook, just to keep bringing me back. Yeah, and it just pops in, and then you're like, when's that coming back? I don't know, and then it does come back when you least expect it. The tone of the keyboard almost sounds modern to me. It sounds like a bell on an analog telephone, which is a total paradoxical thing to say, but that's just what the sound reminds me of. And at the end, when after about 6 minutes 30, there's some very, very synthwave synths, like power
exactly,
synths,
absolutely.
which I love that shit, man.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the ones I mean. It's such an interesting choice to throw into this song, but I fucking love it because it completely changes up the panorama of what's going on here. I mean, I just absolutely fucking adore that tune. The 6th track, Black Leaves and Broken Branches. Doesn't really start subtle with this incessant looped grainy scream.
Yeah, it sounds like a scream.
The lowest stream figures of the album that I could see, which probably reflects the slightly esoteric arrangement of it. There's bell strikes in it, almost like a distant village. Like you're on the other side of the hillside, you can hear church getting called. There's, I think, synthesized wind organs, or at least if they are wind organs, then they're really heavily processed. They kind of puff away asynchronously. The song sort of collapses around about 2 minutes 20. There's all these drones, it convulses a bit, and then I would say it mournfully passes out the shot. It's like a figure just walking off stage, like a walking corpse or something. It's really, really odd, low-key ending.
Yeah, it's quite elegiac, I think, towards the end. Earlier on, you said he created a harmonic guitar, whatever that is.
Yeah.
There is some kind of stringed instrument in the background of this song. I thought initially it was a cello going through distortion pedals. It could be that. It could be a guitar as well. It starts off and it kind of slowly fades out. This is going to sound really weird, but it reminds me of Frost. Which is odd.
The David Jason detective show.
Yes.
Aye.
Big Dave.
I see it.
The higher register that comes in sort of halfway through sounds like an accordion, so maybe that's the thing you're talking about. Yeah, it feels like it reminded me of an accordion, and some really languid, almost analog percussion. It feels very played. The song has a lot of push and pull, which is what I really enjoy about it. It never really stays as the one thing, and it has tension and then release and tension and release, which I think makes it really clever. And I kind of get the feeling towards the end that it's almost like there's a really catchy song like struggling to break out of the chains of the noise of this song.
This song's really not interested in letting it out.
Yeah, it doesn't. No. Yeah.
The 7th track, Kin to Coal, and I did kind of ponder that title for a bit, and I suppose as carbon-based life forms, aren't we all kin to coal? It has played cymbals that kind of twinkle over some dark electronics. There's some sort of overdriven instrument feeding back in the background of this track. And I think
that's a distorted cello.
Well, this could be one of these,
or harmonic
guitars
guitar.
that we're talking about. Yeah. And that cacophony, it doesn't flood the song immediately. Yes. It makes for this really ragged backdrop, and then around about 3 minutes 20 it fully commits to the horror, kind of surges forward, engulfs most of the track, and it actually sounds to me something like what would be a natural accompaniment to the worst moment of an Ari Aster movie. know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is one of those moments where his future work soundtracking just does not seem a surprise.
It almost feels like a proper dance song with a percussion choice. It has almost like a house percussion feel to it, but it's obviously way, way, way more downbeat and darker than any of that ever could be. It's a lot more textural as well. But whatever that stringed instrument is doing all the feedbacking and stuff like that, it's a really gnarly sound. I really, really dig it. Really dig it.
And it gives it that analog human kind of quality that it needs, yeah.
Around halfway through, it becomes like a wall of digital noise before going back to the frantic rhythm of the song. And there's some sounds towards the end which sound like whale call to me. It's a really intriguing bit of music, both horrific and unsettling, whilst also being strangely alluring. Yeah, big fun outro, big noisy outro as well.
Yeah. The eighth one, Punish Honey, title track, and far from being a bombastic title track, it's actually one of the most subdued works.
It's kind of
here.
an interlude, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's short, it's unintrusive, it's maybe even playful, thanks to this uncharacteristically childish synth whistle thing in the left side. I wonder if that's the sort of flute thing that he made.
Could be.
It lends the sense that the 3 tracks in a row are closer to a score, you know, from track 6, 7 and 8, closer to a score than a standalone musical work.
Aye.
Then with the 9th track, which turns out to be the final track, DPM, it really redresses that dip in energy in quite a confrontational style. There's this oddly hollow synth burst that pierces through a floor of drum-like machine noise. A siren appears, or at least something that's somewhere between the sound of the emergency services and a huge robotic
It totally
fly.
sounds like, I've written here, it sounds like a siren to me.
Yeah, but it's also a bit like a robot fly. let's be clear, right? The snare arrives, and what the snare does is it basically confirms the length of the bars, because it's also kind of ambiguous and drifting that you're not really sure how fast this song is. You know, because the snare could have come in at half that time and a quarter of that time, but it comes in, gives it a bit of structure, and those kind of hollow stabs that I was talking about start to make a lot more sense as a result. There swells a gritty bass, and another drunken synth lands, and that drunken synth, I think, helps thematically tie this track in with the earlier parts of the record. It's a song that does harken back to that. Remember that label that he had of non-dance dance music? Because fuck knows who dances to this, but don't let them babysit your kids. It is, yeah, I like the energy that this track brings to the end of the album. I mean, my conclusion on the album, I mean, this record, whilst I do think it's uneven, contains some of my absolute personal high points of electronic music from the last decade and a half. Red Sex and Anima rarely fail to impress friends when I play them. I'm like, here, check this artist out. His transition into scoring work seems an absolute no-brainer as a result. If I had a criticism of this album, my own selection, it would be that the terrain between the Anima track and DPM, so tracks 6, 7 and 8, Black Leaves, Kinticle, Punish Honey, are a little too ghostly. Like it's like a folk horror moorland at sunrise or sunset. The menace and the subtlety is admirable, but the experience drops off in energy ever so slightly. And I think contrary to our usual take in this show, where we're telling people to cut tracks, I would have quite liked another track in there, maybe just prior to Kinticle, to just pick up the pace slightly and join the dots as well thematically with the earlier part of the album. Because I do think for those 3 tracks, whilst they're good tracks in and of themselves, the energy's low, and they don't have a lot of the elements that that sort of make the first part of the record feel really consistent. I just would have loved one more track in here, but it's a mild criticism given how good I think it is overall. And when an artist this esoteric, it seems kind of pointless to complain, right? Because given the other albums, and particularly some of the later work, I'm actually grateful I got as much structure as I did on this record, because a lot of his releases, especially the individual releases, don't have a lot of like apparent structure. They're quite drifty and shapeless and formless. He clearly doesn't feel beholden to jumping through a lot of conventional album hoops. As such, I think I need to suspend my own preferences and accept it as much as a piece of art as I maybe do a collection of songs. And I wrote that down, and then I read my note back, and I was like, in fairness, that's a privilege that I don't actually grant to many on this show, where I'm like, it's art, just let it be what it is. It's not really concerned with being songs. However, I just feel like he's earned that, and that's kind of something that with a lot of the other places where I pull people up for that, where they've lost sight of the fact that they're making music, particularly Hacks and Cloak, I also didn't feel he'd earned it. You know, like nothing in Vessel's trajectory suggests to me that this is the result of bad judgment. It suggests to me that he just has different priorities, and I'm sure Hacks and Cloak has different priorities as well, but I feel Hacks and Cloak just misses ingredients that give him the right to still have the esteem that he has. Yeah, so that'd be it. I mean, Vessel has different musical priorities, but god damn it, when we overlap, I think his stuff is fantastic.
It's interesting. On DPM itself, for me, I really like, there's a really lovely power synth that comes in about 2 minutes 20, which I just love, and it becomes quite twisted, and I like the tone of it. And there's a lot of good melodies just fighting to get out of this song, which I really enjoy. It does threaten to go for a big stomper ending.
Yeah.
It doesn't do it. And I admire that, but also annoys me, like you were saying of that track earlier on. I think it's quite a wildly inconsistent record, if I'm totally honest. There probably is only 3 or 4 songs on it that I would go back to that I find actually quite intriguing. I think over all the stuff of his that I listen to, it doesn't have a consistent album for me. But that's fine. I like a lot of albums that are inconsistent. We all do. The high points are really good though, and he does make, I think, very interesting music in a way which is quite unusual. And he, like I said earlier on, I love his melodic choices, even though they're not super conventional, but to me they're also kind of catchy. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, glad you enjoyed it. Well, that brings us to
the Nexus.
The Nexus.
A complicated series of connections between different things.
So, Mark, tell folks what the Nexus is.
The Nexus is kind of like 6 degrees of separation. Somebody, usually, picks a figure, be that real or imagined, and we have to link that person to the artist that we are covering this week.
Via interesting avenues,
yeah.
In theory.
Sometimes Nazis.
We declined to pick a name out the tub last week for reasons of stupidity, but we also decided that it was an appropriate opportunity to pay tribute to somebody that had a really fucking bad time of it recently. Mark, will I introduce him?
Yes.
So we've chosen to do it to Chris Hoy. And Chris Hoy, you know the name, is a 6-time Olympic gold medalist cyclist, guy who's done a lot of stuff for charity as well in his time. Chris Hoy has revealed that he's got terminal cancer. Bit of a national hero in Scotland, certainly in sporting terms.
He's got a velodrome named after him in Glasgow.
He does. Aye, and a legacy of like good deeds as well.
Yeah, some guy.
So he has prostate cancer that has spread to his bones. Although I did notice his prognosis was 2 to 4 years at the time, which was a year ago that he got the diagnosis, which must mean that there's a lot of very sophisticated management going on with his condition for it to be that long. But this news also came right after his wife received a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. So just a fucking pure sin for that family.
Brutal, man.
So wanted to highlight a stand-up Scot born in Edinburgh. I'm not hold that against him. And hopefully he's saved some other lives in the process by highlighting this and encouraging other folks, especially men, to go and get lumps and bumps checked.
Yeah, I mean, we did speak about this. Don't want to bring a tone down too much. We spoke about this briefly.
Man, I mean, it's Vessel.
Yeah. We spoke about this briefly earlier on, but, you know, I think men get screened for prostate cancer after 50. There's been...
Chris Hoy's 48.
He's 48. There has been, and he's been living with this for a couple of years. He had a sore shoulder, and that's whatever happened after that led to him being diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, with the increasing prevalence of cancer diagnosis in people that are young, and young is being classed as people under 50, that we could probably stand to be doing things like prostate cancer checks and bowel cancer checks for men much earlier than 50. And I think that's probably something that we should all be thinking about if we're of a certain age.
Yeah.
A little PSA there from me.
Yeah, no, it's sensible, and that's kind of when somebody famous does come out and go through these things publicly, the hope is that by doing that, they're also helping somebody, you know, just remember, like, here, I should maybe get checked. You know what I mean? Anyway, Vessel scored the Northman, as we've mentioned, which is a loose retelling of the story of Amleth.
Nice.
Amleth is a prince of Scandinavian legend and was the direct inspiration for Hamlet.
Aha.
You may notice it in the anagram, Hamlet, Amleth. In 1969, the actor Richard Chamberlain became the first US actor to play Hamlet on stage since John Barrymore in the early 1920s. Do you know Richard Chamberlain, the actor? Tower and Inferno.
Oh, okay.
And stuff like that. His name is speculatively thrown into the conversation around a famous whodunit serial killer mystery. Have you ever heard of the Doodler?
No.
The Doodler. Yeah,
Doodler.
Exactly what I said. It's not a Batman villain. So the Doodler was actually a serial killer of gay men in San Francisco in the 70s. He's responsible for between 6 and 16 deaths. The name, he sketched his victims often on the beach prior to killing them.
Oof.
Never identified, although there's really quite strong rumours that persist to this day that the police know who it is, but have no conclusive way to prove it. And the case is actually still open. In recent years, they used, quote, forensic genetic genealogy technology, which actually highlighted a previous suspect in the Golden State Killer case. Yeah. There were two famous survivors. Well, I say famous. Two quote-unquote famous survivors of the Doodler. One, a diplomat, identity never revealed, meant to be a US diplomat. And another, quote, a well-known entertainer. The identities were never confirmed, but Richard Chamberlain, who is openly gay, was married for years and years and years, along with Rock Hudson, who was not openly gay, were two of the most commonly cited.
That's very interesting.
No, Rock Hudson actually lived in San Francisco at the time. Richard Chamberlain lived in Los Angeles, but he was seen in San Francisco, including when he was filming The Tower and Inferno in the 70s. Now, Rock Hudson was one of the first famous actors that a Mr. Steven Spielberg ever sat down for a meeting with, way back in the late 60s, along with Cary Grant and Charlton Heston. Steven Spielberg was in his teens, but after he'd made a film called Amblin, you know, as in Amblin Entertainment, he was hanging around movie sets, basically picking up work and trying to talk to people and pitching that Amblin piece furiously. And Steven Spielberg obviously then later went on to direct E.T. the Extraterrestrial in 1982, the highest grossing film of the 1980s.
I know where you're going with this.
And Chris Hoy was first inspired to cycle after watching E.T. at the age of 5. That's what he says.
Ain't that cute? Yeah, what a lad. You went through films, which is very unusual for you.
It is a wee bit. I felt dirty.
So Vessel did a remix of a folk song called Exits. The singer of the band Foals is Yanis Philippakis. Sorry, Jason. The Greek man that's listening. In 2008, January 2008 to be precise, Yanis Philippakis appeared on an episode of Nevermind the Buzzcocks.
All right.
Buzzcocks used to be awesome back in the day.
Did.
And the new series with Greg Davis is actually pretty good because it's got a real energy of total chaos, like anything can go wrong.
But it's not.
I really enjoy it. I love Greg Davis, so I'm a big fan of Greg Davis. But back back in the day when Mark Lamar was the host, he left the show and there was a season or a series rather of guest hosts.
Yeah.
Simon Amsterdam was one of them who ended up becoming
the permanent host
for four series after that.
And he was good, but that season of like guest hosts was fucking poor.
Yeah, one of them
was it Little Kicks? Were they two guys? Was it? Am I getting them confused? Those two boys?
Rizzle Kicks, maybe.
Rizzle Kicks.
Yeah.
Oh, they were a fucking nightmare.
One of those guest hosts was Jonathan Ross, who had been a contestant on the old show 8 times. Jonathan Ross is obviously a bit of TV royalty. He's a hugely well-known name. He's had his own chat show for what feels like 50 fucking years. He always pops up in places. One of those things he's been on is Celebrity Juice. Have you ever watched Celebrity Juice?
I have not.
It's hosted by Keith Lemon, who's one of Lee Francis's characters.
Yeah.
It's not for me, but it is absolute chaos. My ex used to really enjoy it and she used to watch it, and I always thought it was really funny because Keith Lemon's really good at making these like fake celebrities like fucking Love Island and all that feel deeply uncomfortable, which I think is worth the price of admission alone. There's been a ton of folk in that show who have crept up all over other trash UK TV, and one of those is Corey Feldman.
That's so weird. I watched a video of him today.
Was it his amazing guitar solo?
No, it was him arguing with Corey Haim about why neither of them helped each other out when they're being abused.
Oh.
It's kind of tonally fitting with the rest of this show.
Yeah. It's a hard conversation to have when you're young as well, isn't it? One of the things that he was on the same year as Celebrity Juice was Dancing on Ice in the UK. Dancing on Ice in 2025 will be in its 17th fucking series. How's that been going for 17 years, man? I can't believe this shit. I can't believe it still gets made and people watch it. And in the new series will be Steve Redgrave.
Okay.
Who is a former rower and one of the UK's most successful Olympians.
Yes.
He was the first person to get 5 gold medals, and in the 2012 Olympics, Chris Hoy beat him because he got 6.
Yes.
He got 2 in that Olympics. Chris Hoy has since been superseded by his fellow cycling teammate, Jason Kenny, who now has 7, who got his 7th one at the 2020/2021 Olympics.
That's right.
So, yeah, there you go.
Aye. Well, I think we got through it with a reasonable amount of good humour. We did touch upon child abuse and death and cancer.
What are we doing next week?
Pop punk.
We're not doing pop punk next week. Don't have that in me.
Let's leave it up to the gods.
Yes, let's leave it up to the gods.
Call to action, go and subscribe to the show if you had a good time.
Yep. Leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also do comments on Spotify as well, by the way, so if you do want to leave us a comment, please do. It
always breaks my heart when I go on another podcast. I've got like 700 fucking comments and reviews, and we've got, 50?
Mm-hmm.
But come on, guys. Come on, you must have something to say about it. We're contentious, we're loud-mouthed, we're opinionated. Come and have a go if you think you're hard enough.
Hopefully very soon we'll have a lot of really annoying comments on our videos, but
I will see about that. So we're preparing, we're slowly building, we've not forgotten about it. We're getting all the video shit in place to start this YouTube series. So bear with us. That is on its way,
yes.
For better or worse.
Aye. So there's probably going to come a point in the near future where we'll go dark for a while, we'll say.
Yeah, we might need to take a couple of weeks out to get all that shit rolling, but we'll tell you about that close at the time. Anyway, in the meantime, if you want to come and banter with us and give us ideas, in fact, for that show as well, it might be quite good on the AAA group to get on there and tell us what to talk about on the video shows, because that will be more of a topical show. It'll be like, this week we're going to cover this, this and this. So subscribe, £4, or go up to £15 a month and you'll be part of the record club, and each month we'll send you a record that we've purchased directly from a band or a label, independent, giving them money, giving us money, keeping them going, keeping us going. And you're basically buying yourself a nice little surprise gift at the same time. Once a month it arrives and you're like, fucking nice one. So give that a shot. Mark, you want to pull a name out of the Nexus tub?
It's dwindling, isn't it?
Yeah, it's dwindling, so get your Nexus suggestions in.
Nexus. This is
hopefully legible.
Debbie McGee by Kai.
Debbie McGee.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that'll mean a lot to Brits of a certain age. Nice one. Right, Mark, I'll catch you in happier times, perhaps.
Hopefully. Bye.
Kroger Delivery has one mission: to deliver the freshest food right to your door. That's why our drivers are pros. Our trucks are refrigerated. And when it comes to low prices, we always deliver. With $20 off your first order of $75 or more, there's no better time to get in on the action. Mission accomplished. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.